You're listening to the Westminster Canterbury Tales podcast, creating community to foster joy and well-being. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to Navigating Through the Weeds with Dr. Hill and Dr. Crenshaw of Cannability Consulting, a division of Westminster Canterbury on Chesapeake Bay. We are here to provide education, consultation, care coordination, and community outreach to empower you, your loved ones, and the healthcare industry in safely navigating through the weeds of hemp and medical cannabis.
What's your greatest source of inspiration?
Oh gosh, we're gonna get emotional right from the start.
Yes, that's why these are big worldly questions.
We gotta get some tissues. Oh my goodness, my greatest source of inspiration, probably my father, especially professional aspect. I saw him be such a leader my whole life in the fire department, and he still is. And that was just inspirational to me, and not just becoming a nurse, but becoming a leader and sort of blazing a trail and not being afraid to ask questions or stand up for what's right, because he modeled that for me all the time.
Okay, if you could travel to any point back in time, what year would it be that you would choose and why?
I would probably travel back to when my grandparents, those who are no longer with me, my father's parents, and my mother's mother, and when they were still alive, and asked them some, questions that I, wish I would have thought to known at that young age when they were still with me. One nice thing about working in senior living is seeing the wisdom and experiencing the wisdom of residents all around me, and I spend a lot of time with people who have been on this earth far longer than I, and get to hear their stories and where they came from and what they did, and what they might do differently in the future and how they sort of paved their way. And I didn't get a chance to ask those questions to my grandparents.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So was that part of why you got into what you do? Did that inspire you?
It did. To be a nurse, yes. And then to continue the specialty of being in long-term care, with older adults. I just found a passion for the need to serve and advocate for those who maybe over time, whether it be through dementia or other reasons, lost their abilities to do so. And I think that it's continuing to grow. They call it the silver tsunami. There's the baby boomer generation ages, and there's a huge gap in clinicians who serve this population. And so I was a caregiver for my grandparents before they passed away, and started in this type of nursing, just kind of stumbled into it and never left.
Is there any experience that, the older generation has helped you with a decision that has been a great decision and you have relied on their wisdom? Their wisdom. Yes.
Let me see if something sticks out. I would say the, decision, or sort of the continued, dedication and resilience to, continuing my education. Okay. I had received a lot of encouragement from others to, keep going. And of course, there is far more to life than a degree or an education. And there's many people who are equally as amazing, if not far surpassed, that don't necessarily have that same level of educational experience. But I think that the dedication that it took to continue to go down that path basically till I couldn't go anymore was definitely strongly influenced by the wisdom of folks who said, I wish that I had not stopped, or I wish that I had been able to get started, or if you have the ability to continue, keep going for, as long as it suits you, or as long as you're able, because they were able to say, I had been there, I had done that. And if I were to go back, and although I didn't have regret, one thing that I wish I had done was continued or kept on that journey.
We often don't take notice of what the older generation, the wisdom that they do have to pass on to us. What would you say to younger folks, why they should pay attention to the older generation?
They have seen and experienced things. We're in a completely new age of technology, and everything is so fast, and there's a lot of things out there that are very volatile, and everyone is very sensitive, and life can be very complicated. And there is wisdom in trying to simplify things and really focus on what truly matters. Being able to be with yourself and be with your family and be with what it is that you love without everything else around you is sort of a lost art.
And my husband and I were just talking about this morning, how, the technology that younger folks can't even fathom. Do you think we're better off, or do you think we are not better off because of all the technology?
I'd say we're not better off. I mean, there's certainly plenty of reasons to celebrate technology and innovation, and there have been a great deal of wonderful things that have, come along with it. But as a society and as a human being, I think that there's some give and take, and we have to continue to give that wisdom to people who don't know what it's like any other way.
So did you always want to be a nurse?
At one point, I went through a very brief stint of wanting to be a meteorologist.
Oh.
That was very brief.
Okay.
But for as long as I could remember before that and before nursing was being a teacher. I really thought that I wanted to be an English teacher. I've always loved to read. I've always loved to write.
That's what I was.
Really?
Yes,
I was. That's right. And you did, what was it, kindergarten?
No, I did middle school.
Middle school. Okay, yeah. See, I was ranging in I was like fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade.
That was about where you felt comfortable.
That's what I was always thinking. And I remember playing school for hours, making my sister be the student, and I was the teacher. And I think that probably ties back into how much I love to learn and how much I love to be in school, because I really liked that piece of things. And I mean, I really feel like every nurse really is a teacher. Maybe not in front of a classroom with the same group of students every day, but with their residents or their patients on a daily basis. So I still feel like I got to fulfill that dream while also finding nursing and being a part of that as well.
Lifelong learning is the thing that lifelong learning. And myself being a teacher, I was a teacher for 16 years, 14 of it being an English teacher for middle school, and then the last 2 I was a civics teacher. So 8th graders and that sort of thing. But you're even though I'm not teaching anymore, I'm still educating. So I feel like I'm a teacher as well still. So,
we are.
Yeah, we all are.
And I mean, what you're doing with Cruel Consequences, you are teaching, you are educating, you are advocating, all of those traits that whether you're in the classroom or out, you're bringing those skills and that knowledge everywhere you go.
That's right. If I may talk about Cruel Consequences. It is, it's something I think that I created that for some people initially, it's hard to understand what it is about, because there really is no one else doing it the same way I'm doing it. When I really thought about it, why I created this, it was because it was very selfless. I felt like it was very selfless, because I don't like talking about myself a lot, right? I don't want to talk about myself. And when I created this nonprofit and I had these, I was the only one speaking out. I was speaking in the General Assembly. I was talking to legislators, and it was me. I was telling my story about having multiple sclerosis and the association with cannabis and whatnot. But, I never really felt comfortable with that. I felt like there were other voices that needed to be heard. And why not the people who are criminalized? And why not create a platform where their voices can be heard, too?
And you've done that. Would you mind telling the listeners or explaining a little bit about what is?
Yeah, what is it, right? No, so it's Cruel Consequences, Portraits of Misguided Law. If you pick that apart, very long name, I know, but it was the name was designed because I wanted it to be an art exhibit. And if you know anything about art and exhibits, that is the way they name them. They're very long names, and they're, and
like dissertations.
It is portraits there. It's a portrait exhibit. I have skills in photography. My bachelor's is in communication, media, and newspapers. I used to write for newspapers. Cruel Consequences really was a culmination of all of my talents that I could put towards this movement of cannabis, what I could do. Here I am. I come in 2017, and it's like I meet a lot of people that are involved with cannabis, and it just seemed like there were a lot of jaded people. Like they were like, we've been fighting this for years. You have nothing to contribute. Like, what are you gonna, you're newbie. Like, what are you gonna bring to the table here?
Well, that's terrible.
Yeah, no, I know it sounds initially right, but it did it gave you power,
it gave you fuel.
Yes, the fire to try and say, well, yeah, I do have something to contribute. Yes, I do. Here's what you haven't heard. You all want to tell me. There are people criminalized. I come from a space. My husband retired from the Army after 25 years, and here I was a military wife. I told you I was a teacher for 16 years. Nowhere in my world were there people that were criminalized for cannabis.
Right.
And so I believed all of the propaganda, bought all into it because that's what we were told, and that's what, you were just accepted that. And, I went along with it until at age 45, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which changed my world.
I can only imagine.
It changed my world. I knew that people saw me differently. And then when I found cannabis, it wasn't until, I realized it was medicine and could help me. It wasn't until like 2017 is when somebody introduced CBD oil to me. And that's when I had just had a relapse. My liver had failed from medications that they were prescribing to me. And then I was recovering from that and considering like I got to keep taking these medications, and I was in so much pain. Somebody had introduced CBD to me, and they said this could help you. At the time I didn't even know it was cannabis. I thought it was just some strange supplement that they wanted me to take or whatever, and out of spite I just said, yeah, okay, I'll take it, sure.
You'll try it.
I'll try
Why
it,
not?
fine, whatever, get you off my back, And then from there I became curious, and being a teacher, that made me feel duped in a way, because
Right.
we pride ourselves on knowing, like, I know that I've studied this, and
it
I
was a
learned
whole
this,
new
and
world.
whole new world. And I was like, wait, somebody lied to me? What?
I hear that so often. People are like, why did no one tell me this?
Exactly. So, I mean, that's what got me started. And, my natural lifelong learning, my commitment to always learning. You always have something to learn. And to find out that this whole entire thing that I had bought into was now medicine for me. And it was a shift in my perspective on a lot of things, because I also was not around anybody that had been criminalized. And so there was sort of a fear with me. I was like, wait a minute, should I be scared of people? Like,
Right. Or am I going to be criminalized? What's going to happen?
Yes. Like, what, yeah. And again, my curiosity took hold, and I wanted to, just for my own purposes, wanted to meet people. So I started meeting them, and I was like, man, you're just like me. And that's what I would have done if I was like that, and what you told me, and why aren't these stories out there? So I got frustrated also with when I would advocate for cannabis, whether a politician, a legislator was for or against it, they'd all use the same story. It was always the guy on the street corner.
But it wasn't the MS patient or the
wasn't
nurse
right,
or
exactly.
the person who needed to get something for their husband who could find no other relief or anything like that. Yep, same story, that same prohibited, stigmatized box that we probably all came from at some point. And so I think what you did was really profound in identifying, what you had been led to believe up until that point and how the world changed for you, and are really using that to help change the perspective of others, which
ultimately,
is great.
When you think about it, it's like, what am I doing? I'm telling these stories, but ultimately I would like to see people find their voice, have the courage, being given the courage to speak up on this topic. And I think that the ones that have been shamed the most are the ones that I would like to inspire to speak out. They have the most to say.
How could someone get in touch with you if they were interested in sharing their story? Your website?
Yeah, my website is cruelconsequences.org, or you can message me on social media at Cruel Consequences on Instagram or Facebook. We have about 25 different stories. They're all diverse. I learn from people's lives.
You're like the human connection, like the life aspect of it is something that I think is really untapped, and you're doing a really good job of uncovering.
That's why I'm trying to do this new book here, is because I feel like that's the piece that's missing is, okay, talk to people, and still there's that stigma. It's like I'll say, well, I'm writing a new book, after they find out what I've written about before with the criminalization stories and that, and I'm like, I'd like you to be a part of it. Or I'll start to talk to them about it, and they're like, well, I've never been criminalized. It's that immediate, I've never been arrested, so I wouldn't be in that, so there's a piece for the consumers that have never been arrested, but yet they still have a story to tell, and we need to tell about them.
And there's other consequences. It's not all just the criminalized piece of it. There are consequences to how we've sort of navigated cannabis for the past couple of decades here in the States, and it doesn't all have to be in a court of law.
It's the medical patient that doesn't want to be judged. Everybody has a piece where they still feel a little bit of a shame with this, and they've got to hold back. As we were talking about before, you label yourself in this. We are kind of in this, and depending on, the company we are around, we say, oh, I'm a medical patient, like, yes, I consume cannabis, or But I'm medical. But it's okay because I'm a medical patient, that kind of. And it'll go the other way too. Somebody that's in adult use, they don't want to be labeled medical for some reason. And there's that, stigma to being something medical related. So they'll be like, oh, no, I'm recreational. No, I've
been doing it for years before medical was ever even a thing.
Yes. And there's a bit of a bravado too. It's like I was doing it before legalization, I would like for this book to somehow bring us together. And I'm just going to shoot with some random questions. Okay,
go for it.
So what's the most impressive thing you think your friends would say about you?
Oh, wow. Well, see, like you mentioned earlier, you don't really like to talk about yourself. I feel the same way.
Okay,
where
I
I'm
can
like,
skip that one.
No.
Okay.
We can give it a go.
Okay.
I would like to think that, my friends would say that my heart is always in the right place, that I get asked a lot or commented a lot about sort of my drive as far as like never stopping. It's like, when do you sleep? When do you relax? When do you, so definitely have the attribute of being well driven. And maybe that's just because I'm like, sorry guys, I can't make it because of, this or that. I do think that, my friends and family are very encouraging and very, supportive of the work that I'm doing. You had mentioned sort of that disclaimer, like, wanting to talk about, cannabis quietly. And I know we're not really here to talk about, cannabis, the book that you're working on right now, but I, can relate back to what you were saying a moment ago about having to have some sort of qualifier. My qualifier before was like, well, it's for research, it's for school, or it's for this, or it's for that. And then it over the years have been able to, for lack of a better term, sort of like come out of the closet as to, how I've, felt about this for a long time. And so, initially received that, I guess, support and encouragement through the vessel of this is for, academic purposes, but overall now have just received overwhelming support of, what we're all trying to do, what we're really trying to do to sort of put a new perspective and bring new resources to the industry.
Did you get to meet your great-grandparents?
I did, most of them. So on my mother's side of the family, I met my great-grandparents and have some really great memories of that. They weren't local to me. They lived in Minnesota. And so have some memories of family trip going to visit them, which I'm very lucky to have said that I've met my great-grandparents. I don't think that a lot of people have had that same experience. So I definitely cherish those memories.
What's something that people don't know about your personality?
That although I may seem outgoing in a lot of ways, especially since I'm very comfortable public speaking and, doing a lot of, things in that lane, I'm honestly a very shy person. I definitely say with some anxiousness. I know you're giving me that face because we know each other and you're like, really, Alex? Are you sure?
Yeah, right.
And it's true. Yeah. I think it's something that I've learned to work around or work with, but generally I'm a very shy person, which seems contradictory, but it's true.
Right. Do you believe in second chances?
I do. Wholeheartedly.
In everything.
I mean, I'm sure that there's exceptions to the rule.
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. But speaking in general terms, I think that, second chances and maybe even third chances are warranted because, as a close coworker often says, we're all balls of clay just being molded. And so if I were held to a choice or a decision that I made 10 years ago, I don't feel as though I was the same person 10 years ago. And I think that, again, speaking in very general terms, because there are exceptions, that most of the time people wake up wanting to do the right thing. And it may not always have the best outcome or turn out as intended, but that doesn't mean that the intention, wasn't there. And we also never know what battles people face that we have no clue about.
When you want to give up, what keeps you going?
I would say, and I actually have a tattoo that sort of resembles this. It says, "Don't sink," but one of my favorite quotes is, "All the water in the world can't sink a ship unless it gets inside." While sometimes you might feel as though you're drowning and the water's coming in, and sometimes I use that metaphor. I'm like, I'm drowning, I'm so overwhelmed. But in actuality, not necessarily. And when I say don't let the water get inside, that doesn't mean be hard or be cold or be invincible. Like, it's good to be vulnerable, but let the water get inside and have a bucket prepared and ready to start, putting it over back on the other side where it belongs, and take care of yourself.
What is your most prized possession?
I have a couple. One that I will, hold on to and always have is I have a needlepoint that my either great grandmother or grandmother, made. It's of a beautiful blue jay, and I also have a tattoo of that as well. And it is something that, I don't know, whenever I look at it, I think of happiness, and know that someone, also, we were talking about earlier about the world going so fast, that someone had to sit and make every single one of those stitches and not feel worried about what appointment you have to do or what meeting you have next, or whatever you have to do, wherever you have to be. You had to focus on, that in the moment. Another, and I don't even necessarily know the origin of, how or why it was, I remember where I got it, but how it was given to me, or I'm sure it was very insignificant at the time, but my father had given me this turtle, sort of like, it was a leather turtle, like paperweight that we got at like the Neptune Festival. Mm-hmm. So for anybody who's, local knows the Neptune Festival is a big deal every year, and there's all this art and crafts and all these different things. And my turtle's blue, my sister's turtle is purple. Those were like our two favorite colors then. And I have it on my desk. I've had it for the past, I've been in nursing for about 11, 12 years now. That turtle, that paperweight has followed me everywhere. Even when I don't have paper, it's just always with me.
That's great. It gives back like nice memories.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And it's very functional too.
Who would you want, if you had a 10-hour flight across the world to go on, who would you want to sit next to, dead or alive?
I think that there's so many, pioneers in the nursing industry and the cannabis industry that I would want to, take the time to really sort of pick the brain and collaborate with and sort of bounce ideas off of and learn from, someone who's, considered a leader or a trailblazer in that, sort of industry. But, of course, can think of, many family members who are no longer, with us, who I'd love to spend some time with. And I think that I'm noticing a theme in some of my answers of just like, cherishing, things and having those conversations, those crucial conversations, or those tough conversations when you can, which I think is really hard to do sometimes. And instead of going, I wish I had asked that, or wish I had talked about that, just bringing it up if you can. But I think it'd be really interesting to have a flight with my future self, what to expect or how to navigate things. I think that we all have goals and we all have dreams, and wish that we had a crystal ball to know like what happens next. And that's part of like the spice of life, is not knowing.
Okay. So if you could give yourself, your 16-year-old self, one piece of advice, what would it be?
If it doesn't matter in about a week, like if it's something that's not going to be bothersome or be a problem in about a week, let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah, just let it go. And know that life is going to continue to change, and the things that really mattered to me when I was 16 and I really thought that had to happen, like, gosh, now I couldn't even hardly tell you. Yeah.
Okay, so then the follow-up to that is, would you have listened?
At 16, that probably would have been the turning point where I maybe just started to listen. Probably be more inclined to listen at like 17 or 18, but I would have at least heard it, maybe kept it in the background and gone, oh man.
It would have mattered later. You would have that's what I meant.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. Let me ask you this. You had mentioned a couple times about being a medical patient yourself and finding cannabis through your personal, health experience. Mm-hmm. Did you ever have a cannabis nurse or a physician or a healthcare provider of any type introduce this topic to you, or was this just someone that you knew personally?
Oh, very good question. So initially it was just somebody that knew about it a little. That's a very good question, Alex, because I feel like the journey I've taken, I've missed those pieces. Uh-huh. Like I didn't come into this like somebody now would come into it. Like
right.
if I were a patient now, I would go the steps, this. By the time I got in front of a cannabis nurse or whatever,
you had already found what you needed.
Yes and no. But what I actually regret though, and this is in like growing the plant too, is that people look at someone like me and they think, because I've been working with for a few years, that they think I know everything already. And for me to take that student side or that patient side, it's not, I have to push it a little bit more with that person and like let them know, hey, I would like to know about this. Wait, I want to know. Like, I don't know about this. Please tell me, so I think I get that.
They assume that you're experienced.
Yeah, they assume that, and they think that I have all the wisdom in the world on, and I know everything. I don't.
And no one does, and that's the amazing thing about this industry is, like, even if you do take the scientific study, like, healthcare route, like, there's more than we could ever begin to know, and it's always changing. So I think it's great when we can all level with each other and say we're all going to learn something new in this experience.
Through my journey, I've been the one trying to teach my own doctors, trying to teach my own.
That was my next question. Has a doctor given you any sort of advice, or have you been educating them?
Mostly me educating them.
Yeah.
And it's been, touch and go. I get you get positive, and I don't think I've ever really had a negative experience with a doctor. But it's more like, and then it's more of that same thing where I may come on too strong, and they think I know so much, and they don't want, they don't know enough,
Right.
and so they don't feel qualified to talk to me about it, But I just want to ask them questions, When I talk to a new doctor, I'll say things that I know about cannabis, but I don't want to come on too strong yet.
Right.
But I want to know what they want, So it can be a delicate. It's an interesting thing, to stand up for this as medicine, but then also be curious enough to want to learn, and people be able to share their concerns with me as well. And I guess that probably feeds into my advocacy work as well. It does help me to see that, because I think if the doctor or the nurse is reacting like that to me, and they think whatever, they make the assumptions about me, how are they treating others who are coming to them that are afraid to ask? Because I'm not afraid to ask.
Right.
I will ask. I used to be, I remember feeling that way initially, but, the more and more, the more experience you have, once I got on television for cannabis, then that was it. The bag was like the cat had opened,
Yeah. So you probably get a little bit of a different reaction from healthcare providers than others may, because they recognize you as already in that space, and they don't, like you said, they don't feel qualified to speak to you. But what often happens is I'm learning is a lot of healthcare providers and just many people in general are nervous or feel underqualified to have give any sort of guidance or support it one way or another. And it's easier to just say, no, don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
And that's what I think everyone in their own way, is trying to reshift, is that we can ask, we can tell, and we can understand that we're learning this together.
A lot of my passion comes for fighting for consumers who are, the unconventional consumers like myself that don't want to be judged for consuming it by a medical professional when I'm just doing the best that I can, and take it from there. But I've had it intrigues me on how different professionals react. Things like, you can find all kinds of research. It says, it's good for MS and it helps with multiple sclerosis. Yet I can go to my MS doctor and they'll play funny games about it.
Right.
And I'm just like, wait, are you reading the same stuff I am? Because this is accessible to you, to read. And I just don't know where the disconnect is. How come I get to read this stuff, but you don't? And
Correct.
you don't, so that.
And they read the pamphlets for those medications that you talked about that put you into liver failure.
Yeah.
And have no problems.
No problems at
talking
all.
about that at all. So if you have cruel consequences, but I know outside of that, you do a tremendous amount of support and education for folks who do consider themselves medical patients here in the state of Virginia.
That's near and dear to my heart. So.
Yes. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe a couple of points of advice for someone, whether they're looking at hemp-derived products or going to the dispensary for medical cannabis? What are your, pearls of wisdom?
If you are curious about cannabis, some of the things that they typically tell you should go low and slow. And when you're curious, please, you need a lot of education before you start to consume. Mm-hmm. And not all cannabis out there is safe to consume.
Correct. Just because it's for sale doesn't mean it's safe.
Yes. And it does depend where you buy it. It does depend. And expenses is an issue for me, too. I grow my own. Not everybody is able to grow their own. But I would encourage, if you wanted to at all, you can. I didn't think I could. I killed house plants before I grew cannabis. So.
Right. And then you learned.
And then I learned, and now I'm really good at it. So now I've gotten really good at it, and I have a harvest every 4 or 5 months. And I grow my 4 plants that are allowed in the states, and do it. And even people I know will try to grow more. There are lots of people growing more than that, but I stick right to the rules, you know. I guess, and you say pearls of wisdom. I'm really adamant about sticking to the rules, and if the rules don't work for us, let's speak out about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but instead of working around it, like what we call in quality and regulatory compliance, normalized deviance, instead of normalizing it and working around it and just kind of living with it, what are we doing to respectfully challenge it or provide insight to, I think we've both seen in our work where legislators, healthcare providers, many people, they're openly admitting we just don't know. Mm-hmm. And so if we're not speaking up saying like, hey, it would make more sense for 6 plants, or it would make more sense for this or that.
Why, yeah.
You know, it's not an instant, like we can fix this tomorrow, but if we're all just kind of working around it or just kind of living within it, it can't change.
I would say as a consumer, if you do consume cannabis or if it is medicine for you, I think that you should go the route that the state has outlined for. You know, you should try to get your medical registration through one of the cannabis doctors that are available, and you should try to make a visit to a dispensary. Whether that's the only place that you shop, and I'm not going to tell you that's, you know, but it should be where you should try to go that route, because there's unsafe cannabis out there, and
Absolutely.
It's going to tend to be probably the cheaper stuff, you know, and so if you're looking, that's an issue, you know.
And some folks I know can't tolerate I'm really thankful that Virginia has the program that they do. We're still growing. I think consistency in product will continue to be a challenge for a little while. But then, you know, secondly, the focus on other cannabinoids other than THC. So I think you're exactly right about, you know, just because it's for sale doesn't mean that it's safe. And, you know, some folks can really benefit from something that's high CBD or high in CBD or something that we're not finding at the dispensary. And so having that awareness of how to safely and within your means, both, you know, legally and financially to, you know, obtain, you know, those things, I think would be a pearl that I'd add on to that. One
last thing is that you should not be afraid to talk to your legislator. Mm-hmm. We just had an election.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm pleased to hear that, you know, the Virginia legislature has now is going to be a majority Democrat with a Republican governor. Now, when I first testified for cannabis, it was the exact opposite. It was a Democrat governor and a majority Republican legislature, both the Senate and the House of Delegates. Well, now it's the opposite. Now we have a Democrat majority legislature with a Republican governor who is staunchly against cannabis. Mm-hmm. It's no secret that he is staunchly against it, but I do believe these legislatures that are against it, it's just a matter of education. Mm-hmm. And I think that responsible consumers should make themselves more well known to their legislator, to the governor. You have a voice, and you can write an email to your legislator any day, and, you know, 5 times a day if you want. But you know, use that voice, because they're looking at the propaganda that has told them over decades that everybody that consumes cannabis must be a bad person. And we need to show that we are not bad people.
Correct. We are teachers. We are nurses. We are older adults. We are lawyers. We are all of the above from everywhere. And it's not just that one picture that we see in our mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
So use your voice would be my thing.
I think that is a great pearl, and thanks for coming here today and using your voice and being on one of the first episodes of Navigating Through the Weeds with Cannability Consulting. It was great to have you.
Thank you very much.
And so just to recap for anybody who's listening, can you tell us one more time how they can find you?
My website is cruelconsequences.org, or you can go on social media. Instagram, it's @cruelconsequences, and the same for Facebook. So reach out.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for joining us on today's episode. If you or a loved one are curious about cannabis or interested to learn more about how Cannability Consulting can help you navigate through the weeds of hemp and medical cannabis, please email us at info@cannability.com or message us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to future episodes and leave us a review. See you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Westminster Canterbury Tales podcast. Thank you for listening.